want to look at, and the thing that I've talked about and alluded to quite a bit, was this section in Corinthians where it talks about if the rulers of the age, if the rulers of the world had known what was happening, they wouldn't have crucified Christ. And it goes on from there, and it talks about, no eye has seen, nor ear heard, nor mind conceived, what God has prepared for those who love him. And you think about what Jesus had to go through at the cross. He in Hebrews it talks about he learned obedience through what he suffered, and how he in his life was submitted to God and obedient to God as Father. It even goes so far as to say he didn't say or do anything unless the Father said and did it. That's how committed he was to obedience to the Father, even as a son. And even though he was a son, he suffered. And the thing I want to focus in on and understand is, first of all, when it talks about the rulers of the age, sometimes people say, well, it's only like, Pilate or the chief priest or things like that. And yes, it was them, but it was also the spiritual forces that have power. They work hand in hand with government around them, and they use that to go against God, bringing people to disobedience, bringing people against God. And if they had known, they wouldn't have crucified the Lord, because what did that end up with? He was resurrected from the dead. He was seated at the right hand of God the Father. He's above all principalities, powers, rulers. He has a name that is above every name. All these things that came because of the crucifixion that led to the resurrection, that led to his exaltation. And now everything, all authority is given unto him. All authority by the Father, until the last enemy is destroyed, and then he will return that authority back to the Father. And in the song we were singing, that the God of the mountain is God of the valley. And, sometimes it's easy to thank God when everything's going good, but it's when we're going through those trials and testings that that's when it really proves our faith. That's when it really shows for. And the way I want to tie that all together is that in verse 9 where it says, eye has not seen, nor ear heard, nor mind conceived what God has prepared for those he loved. And it's interesting that's put together with the crucifixion, with the suffering that Jesus went through. And what I want you to consider and I want you to think about is, like it says in Romans, all things work together for good to them who love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. For those he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image and likeness of his Son. There's a work that God is doing. There's a purpose that God has. And as we go through hard times, as we go through difficulties, as we face, expenses we weren't prepared for, as, vehicles break down, or we got to repair the house, or, there's sicknesses that we deal with, there's loss, there's problems with family members, there's conflict, all these different things that we go through in our lives, God can work them to good. And what happens is the enemy can come in and he'll try to destroy us. He'll try to bring death into our lives. He comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He'll try to attack us in ways in which it'll affect us financially, it'll affect our health, it'll affect relationships, and he'll try to bring destruction in there. But God can take those things and bring them to good. And what the enemy plans for evil, what the enemy plans for destruction in our lives, God can turn around and turn into a great victory.